The most important thing about a stainless steel sink is it's 304 stainless. 304 stainless is 18% chromium and 8% nickel. What that means is the 18% chromium is going to make it shiny, so it'll match your appliances. When they went to the free sinks a few years ago, a lot of guys went, well, what's the most important? If you're giving away a free sink, what's the most important thing about the sink? It's free. So a lot of guys went to 301 stainless. 301 stainless has less chromium, so it's not as shiny, it won't match your appliances, has less nickel. Now what the nickel does is hardens the finish so it lasts longer. If you take a 10-year-old 304 stainless sink, it'll be, as long as you clean it, I mean it's not self-cleaning, but if you clean it, it'll be as shiny as it was the day you put it in. A lot of times you guys take out the old drop-in sinks and they're kind of yellowish and brown. They just look old. That's because they don't have enough nickel. So 18% chromium so it's shiny, and 8% nickel so it lasts longer. The second thing that's important is how you make the sink. When we make a sink, you start with a square piece of steel. Can you see that? Okay, and you draw the bowl. What you're doing is you're drawing, and this steel on the edges is drawn in. That's where the steel on the sides of the sink come from. Okay. When we're done, we cut those off and weld two bowls together. If you'll see on the bottom here, see the weld mark on the top? See this weld mark? You can't see it down the middle because it's painted, but that's the weld mark. Okay. When they do that, you make all four sides of the sink are the same thickness. Now, the guys that in order to make the cheaper sink, they press both bowls at the same time. If you see on here, they press it and it's still drawing. You can see where the steel is drawn in to make the bowl. But in here, there's no place to draw it from. So the way to get it is by stretching and stressing that center rail, okay, which makes it thinner. That center rail can be as thin as 20 or 22 gauge because it's stretched. Now, in addition to being thinner, and thinner is noisier, in addition to being thinner, you can get stress marks and stretch marks in this area, wavy. You've probably seen wavy in the cheap sinks along there. It could be anywhere in the bottom of the sink, but usually it's right along the center rail where it came from. Okay? So that's why welded is so important. Now, obviously, if you press both bowls at the same time, that's one process. If you press this bowl and you press this bowl and you weld it together, it's three processes, so it's a more expensive way to make the bowl. The next thing we're going to talk about is certified quality. Our sinks are CNC certified, so they're going to fit every time. And you can order the sink, and the guys in the shop can cut the hole before it even arrives because they know it's going to fit every time. It's going to be similar. A lot of these bowls are not. I was in Milwaukee not long ago and talking to a guy about using our sinks, and this guy from the shop came out and says, would you please talk him into using it? I get sinks from another manufacturer, and I have to guess which of the three templates are going to fit in the sink. So CNC certification is important. The next thing is all sinks are required to meet ASTM 112.19.3. That's in the Uniform Plumbing Code and International Plumbing Code. When Huntley writes a code, they don't start from scratch. Okay? They adopt either the Uniform Plumbing Code or the International Plumbing Code and then update it to the local conditions. Both of those require that they meet ASTM 112.19.3. To do that, you have to have the manufacturer's logo or model number, logo or name on the sink, and you have to have, it has to be certified, I mean it has to be stamped. See the stamp? Okay. Now, to get that stamp, that's just not something they stamp on there. Your factory has to be inspected twice a year, and they also go out they may call on you to buy a sink to check to make sure that the sinks that are out in the field are the same sinks that we're making in the factory, that we're not doing a switch on them. I've had customers call up and say, hey, this IATMO, that's the guy who does the UPC certification, wants to buy a sink. I said, go ahead and sell them to them. That's what, and I explain what they're doing. All they're doing is checking up to make sure that we're not doing something different than what we do in the factory. The next thing, so it's better steel, that's the 304, better processes, welded. We also, you know, if you ever saw, a lot of sinks have pads all over the sides. Those are made out of recycled tires. They smell. They can give off a rubbery smell. I don't know if you've ever had a real sensitive customer. Sometimes they open up the sink after it's been, open up the cabinets, you'll get a rubbery smell out of it. After 13 years of being with Eclipse, we could no longer get the quality of sinks that our customers, like you, had come to expect. So we went back to the factory that had manufactured these sinks in Korea for Eclipse and made a 20-year deal with them so that we won't have we've changed the templates have changed about 2 or 3 times. That's not going to happen anymore, not for the next 20 years. The first thing we did, we said we don't want just another sink. We want the best sink on the market. So we started from the bottom up. Instead of those smelly recycled tires, the first thing we did was add a thermo pad. This is exclusive. I don't know of anybody else that has it. It keeps the water a little warmer in the sink, and on New Year's Eve when you fill it full of beer and ice for your party, it won't condensate. Underneath here, you may be able to feel it. There's another pad. That's not a recycled tire pad. That is from the automotive industry. If you ever take off the side panel on your car and there's kind of a foil back rubberized sound pad to keep the sound of the road noise off, that's what's underneath here. So it absorbs about 4 times the noise that the recycled tire ones do. Then we've added a eco-friendly bottom coating. When we met with the factory, we had brought in one of our sinks that we wanted to show, and it was a white undercoating and it had like gray scuffs from being in the shop, in the warehouse, whatever. So Jim said, I want the undercoating in scuff gray so it doesn't show. Now it probably doesn't mean anything to the final product, but it looks better when your guys are bringing the stuff in there. It doesn't look like it's been scuffed up and whatever. The finish on here is fully automated, so not only is it consistent within the sink, it's going to be consistent over time. It'll be consistent 5 years from now, 10 years from now. It's going to be a consistent finish. This is what's called a brushed finish. You used to be able to buy the sinks in a polished finish. It was a kind of a real bright, shiny finish. It looked great in the showroom, but the first time you thought about it, it would scratch. With this, you have a chance of fixing. Somebody scratches it, we can, a deep scratch, we can scratch it. We have a kit called Scratch Away Kit. It's real easy to use. It takes a little elbow grease, but you can take the scratches out. If you have a customer that's real sensitive to scratches, you really ought to sell them a set of grids to protect the bottom. Okay? This is the new logo. It is a swan. Cygnet is a swan. The factory, the name of the factory in Korean is Swan, and so that's the Americanized version of it. Now you know more than you ever wanted to know about sinks. This is an enlarged version of our brochure you've probably seen. These are all the available sinks. Now, these are the 16 gauge sinks. The 18 gauge sinks are exactly the same size, so they fit the same holes. If you sell an 18, you can upgrade to a 16 at any time. The Cygnet 18 gauge, because of the way we weld it, and because for some reason, don't ask me why, 16 gauge Korean steel is heavier than 16 gauge Chinese steel, and almost all of the sinks are made with Chinese steel. So it's heavier. If you take an R18 gauge, it's going to be heavier than most sinks sold on the internet as 16 gauge, and I've done it. I'm happy to place them side by side, and it's because of the heavier Korean steel and the process we use to make them. Okay. You will note that we do not have a big single bowl in an 18 gauge. The reason for that is the garbage disposals. We really believe that if you're going to put a garbage disposal in a big single bowl, it needs to be 16 gauge to keep from making, first of all, it makes a lot of noise. It can damage the sink. If you look at a lot of, if you go in the big box stores and they have the sinks, a lot of them will have right on the box, rated for a 1/2 horsepower garbage disposal. Well, they're not bragging about that. What they're telling you, if you use a bigger one, and a lot of people use 3/4 horse and 1 horse garbage disposal, that's going to damage the sink, in addition to being noisy. You know, in my own house, I had a noisy garbage disposal. I hated it. I changed my sink to a 16 gauge sink and it went away. Didn't change the garbage disposal, but the noise went away. So that's why we don't make that. Our single bowls only come in 18 gauge. The reason is because the biggest advantage of having a heavier sink is it's much quieter. If you take this sink and install it the way you guys install it, with silicone and the whole thing, it'll be as quiet as a porcelain sink once all the plumbing and everything is installed. With the single bowls, because they're smaller, they don't have the big surface area as the double bowls, they don't need to, they don't make the noise, so we keep, those are in 18 gauge. We've just started getting a new sinks, lab bowls. Jim spent a lot of time talking to factories in China about lab bowls. The problem with the lab bowls today is they're getting so cheap. I mean, people are buying for $8, $9 a piece when they used to be $70. The biggest problem is the finish doesn't go all the way to the top, and you've got a 1/2 or 3/4 of an inch of raw clay showing, and so the guys have to put a big bead of caulking to hide it, because remember, when you're putting a lab bowl in, you're looking in the mirror, so it's like being twice as far away and twice as low, so you see that ring. So these bowls goes all the way to the top. The other thing is the finish is getting thinner and thinner because they want to rush the process, and if you use a thick finish on the bowls, you'll get bubbles. You may have seen some sinks that have like broken bubbles right in the finish. That's from rushing the finish. So to avoid the bubbles, they make the finish thinner, and you can almost see through it. So these, now the biggest problem we had was going to the factories and convincing them that we wanted a better lab bowl, because everybody else wants a cheaper lab bowl. So it took us 3 months to find a factory that would make the lab bowls we wanted. We're real happy with the quality we got.